Hey, Transplant community, my name is Jim Merle, and basically I just realized it's been quite a while since I've given an actual update as far as my health goes. As a matter of fact, I've had a number of people reaching out to me via email, via message, sending me text, a couple have even called and asking, how am I doing? What are things looking like? And if I've had any further doctor's appointments since I gave the last update. As a matter of fact, the truth is yes. Actually, I went yesterday into clinic, not for the heart transplant type of team, but went in to see my liver doctor, which has kind of been a significant concern over the last basically about 2 years, and most of you already realize it's been about 2 years ago I was actually diagnosed as having cirrhosis of the liver. At the time, they primarily thought that might be related to some of the medications I've been on, medications like Prograf, mycophenolate acid, as well as prednisone, which I was on very high doses of that in the beginning, like the majority of us were. And so because of that, several of you actually became pretty concerned because you said, well, if you're getting cirrhosis of the liver and I'm taking the same medications, will I get the same results? And the answer to that in general is maybe. I mean, who can tell? Again, we are on, many of us, similar medications, and they can have similar side effects and results, particularly when it comes to its effect upon things like kidneys and the liver, okay? Because basically the kidneys and the liver are the things that filter pretty much everything through your body, keep your blood clean, keep, every waste out of your body, that sort of thing. And so because of that, if there's any medications in your bloodstream on a regular basis, they're going to have to deal with that, and they're going to have to face that in some way. However, I went yesterday to my, what is now to me a new liver doctor. I can't say that big word, so I'll just say liver doctor, because mine left on last year at some point in time, and since then I'd actually seen this fellow right here, Dr. Fettig, on one other occasion, and that was the occasion when I went in to have my upper GI, also known as EGD, done, and he was the guy who walked in the room about 5 minutes before the procedure. I already had IVs in and everything, and said, look, I don't feel comfortable doing this. And that was because at the time I was having some issues with some breathing issues, shortness of breath, maintaining some fluid. And so seemingly we're having some heart and or heart-lung type of issues. And so he backed out on doing the procedure. He said, I don't feel comfortable doing it, particularly in that outpatient clinic type situation. He said he would feel much more comfortable having actually as an inpatient over in the hospital across the street and making sure that I had an official, real anesthesiologist handling everything. And he said he just didn't feel comfortable because, as he referred to it then, if I do it in clinic, I'm kind of the one-man show. I'm in charge of the procedure itself, the prep, everything that goes along with it, including the sedation, and he didn't feel comfortable doing that. So he sent me back over to the cardiologist, and as many of you realize, I began to have a battery of tests, including some pulmonary function tests, some exercise tests, just a lot of different stuff went on very quickly that were trying to evaluate what the issue was. Was there really an issue with my heart? Was I actually in heart failure? Was there some pulmonary failure? Or was there a combination of the two? And the end result of that, at this point at least, is we're not really sure. They did find a significant type of evident finding as far as the fact that my heart muscle is weaker and that things are not functioning as they should. However, we also discovered during that period of time that I had some medications that were actually on board at that point that could be causing my symptoms to be worse, or as I said then, worser. And I gave you some advice on that. I did a whole video on it. I'll try to put it up here in the corners. We can go back and watch about that. But basically, we decided to change a few of my medications up. We tried a couple of things. They really weren't working. And finally, the doctor just kind of stepped back and said, Jim, I trust you. You manage your medications. Try to work some things in, work some things out. And then when you get to a place where you feel better, quality of life type feel better and are less symptomatic, let me know, and we'll just call those the adjustments we're going to make. And I'm thankful that my team trusts me in that way and that we've got that kind of relationship. But don't get the idea, even in doing that, one, I didn't have permission to do it because I did, and then two, that they were not still involved. I was still talking to my coordinator on about every 2 to 3 day basis anyway. She was keeping up with me really good as to how those medications were changing and what my results were. Finally, we came to kind of a middle ground. Well, to be honest with you, I've still got good days and bad days as I've had all my life. However, the good days are certainly outweighing the bad right now. And the shortness of breath and some of those issues are not as problematic as they were. So I think we found a good balance there. Again, what exactly is going on with my heart/lungs? We're not sure. Nothing too significant showed up, but at the same time, the medication management is helping that a lot. So that's kind of where I am there. But back to what I did yesterday, and that as I went for my follow-up on my liver and how things were doing concerning that cirrhosis that I was diagnosed with about 2 years ago, 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And at that point in time, they told me that I had mild to moderate cirrhosis and that they would constantly be monitoring that, doing Dopplers, echoes, that sort of thing, sonograms, I think, as well as potentially some liver biopsies, and of course continuing to do what I call the upper and lower GIs, just to come in and take a look at some of those things, as well as all the blood work they do every time I go into clinics. They've been monitoring that. I went in to see the liver doctor yesterday. As I may have mentioned, he's new to me as far as I hadn't had a lot of dealings with him yet, and I was thankful for that because he's great, for one, very nice, very approachable guy. But in addition to that, it's like having a second opinion. You know, I've been with the same liver doctor who was world renowned for about 3.5, 4 years now, and even had met him before that inadvertently. But, you know, he'd been giving me his opinion the whole time. And although I trusted that, now I'm seeing a new doctor, and he kind of gives a little bit different take on it. Not that he rejects what was said earlier, but yesterday, after going and seeing him, he said, yes, we still need to do the EGD or the upper endoscopy. We have to do that. Want to do that as soon as possible. But as far as my liver goes and the cirrhosis, he described it as being, quote, significant. Now, where significant falls on the mild to moderate to severe scale, I'm not really sure. He just said, yes, there is significant cirrhosis or significant liver damage. However, the comforting part was the next thing that he explained to me. And he says, even though you had significant cirrhosis, you are what I call highly compensated. Now, I thought I understood that term, but I wasn't sure, so I went ahead and asked, and he explained that basically your liver is not what it ought to be. However, it's compensating for itself. And you know this about many of our organs. It's just a wonderful thing that God created, that oftentimes when we go into some type of failure, whether it's heart, lung, liver, kidney, pancreas, you know, whatever type of failure, that a lot of times our bodies will compensate, that they'll do something, make some internal adjustments to try to compensate for those failures. And so even though my liver is significantly cirrhosed, I can't say that, I'm also highly compensated. He said the result of that is we pull up your liver numbers, and for the most part, with the exception of one number, they all look great. I mean, he said they look like someone who's athletic, which I'm not, or someone who's extremely healthy and someone who's never had the issues that you have. And he says, I really believe that your cirrhosis is not as much medication based as it is from the fact that you were in heart failure for so long. And particularly, leading up to transplant, those 6 years leading up to transplant, he said, I think your liver was damaged during that. And although it wasn't really addressed at the time because it wasn't your biggest issue, that's where this stems from. He backed that up by continuing to explain that I'm highly compensated and that it's really just unbelievable to him to look, say, on a Doppler or a sonogram and to see what my liver looks like visually, and then in turn look at my numbers. And he said they don't line up, but that's a good thing. You're highly compensated. Again, your liver has found a way around this. It's working with this, and it's really taking pretty good charge of the situation. So the end result is, and I didn't understand this number, perhaps some of you liver transplant patients will be able to explain this more, or I'll do some digging later today. But he explained to me that basically there's one major number that they kind of follow. It's kind of like a score or a grade of, overall liver health, and that goes off what they see visually versus what they see symptomatically versus what they see, in the lab, as they do with me. But he said basically on a scale like that, he said you're hovering around a 10 or 11. And the encouraging part is, he said he went back and looked over my last 3 years with this situation, and he said your numbers haven't really changed. They fluctuated between the 10 or 11, but they've certainly not gone up. And in this case, he said going up is the bad thing. If this particular liver number goes up, that's the proof that you're in bad shape. And so he went ahead to lay out what the potentials were. He said, you stay around this 10 or 11, we basically do nothing. You start creeping up, we make some medication adjustments, we do a few things, we do start the biopsy type process just to really dig down and get a little bit more information. He said, but until you get to, say, a 15-ish/16-ish mark, really we don't do anything. We just kind of let this thing float. Now, he said at 15, they would do the eval for transplant. Now, that's not to say I need a liver transplant now, nor even to say that I would need one then, but he said, I personally like to do my liver evals right around the 15 or 16 level so that we kind of get ahead of everything, because the waits can be long and because the situations can be more and more difficult, and because I oftentimes see people whose numbers stay, pretty much flat, and then once they start to climb, they shoot up. He said we evaluate about 15 or 16, and then we prepare ourselves for transplant at 25. But to be clear about that, he said you're not even anywhere close to that. You don't need that going on right now. You don't even need the eval. You just need to keep doing whatever it is you're doing, and maybe even try to do it even better. And so that relates to, exercise. Of course, diet plays a huge role in liver function and such. Getting proper rest, like it does with everything, same thing. Keeping stress levels down, same thing. So he said just keep doing what you're doing, but try to do it a little bit better. And let's try to keep this number hovering around 10 or 11. And again, he said significant damage, true enough, but highly compensated, so the numbers come out pretty good. So that's how I came out yesterday with that clinic visit. I'm certainly thankful for that. I'm certainly grateful to have got to meet Dr. Fettig and get to work with him for however long our relationship would last. Hopefully he'll be there for a long time. But to get to work with him and considerably get a second opinion on this, because I think it is so important for all of us that we continue to get second opinions. And even if that occurs by, the same doctor and just looking him in the eye sometimes, or her in the eye sometimes, saying, look, explain to me why you're thinking this. Show me the numbers, prove the facts. That's getting a second opinion, or to have a new doctor completely, a new face to talk to. That was wonderful as well. So that's how my clinic visit came out yesterday. And so I thank you for all the prayers and concern. As a side note, I do want to ask you again, maybe some of you saw the video from the other day. I want to ask you again to continue to pray for the family of Robyn Herring. She was one of the great coordinators, transplant coordinators, heart transplant coordinators over at UAB Hospital. She lost her life the other day in a tragic accident that we're all mourning, and we're saddened by that. There's certainly a void there. One of our heroes. That's what Robyn was, certainly one of our heroes. And she has passed on, and so there'll be some mourning and some reset time and all, and her family certainly, especially her two young girls, need your prayers. But thank you for that. And again, thank you so much for caring for me and for caring about those who I care about, which Robyn would certainly be one of those. Thank you so much for joining me today. And until next time, stay stronger, friends.